It's time to get your news on. We are VK1WIA.
This is the April 30 edition of the WIA National News, and this week WIA AGM registration is now open. WIA Director Peter VK4EA joins us, as does from the RAOTC Clive VK6CSW. Plus much more in this edition of news from the Wireless Institute of Australia. I'm Editor Graham, VK4BB.
Ham Radio News. Nobody does it better. We are VK1WIA.
G'day. For the WIA News, this is Peter, VK4EA, on behalf of the WIA Board. Warm greetings to all listeners from Turrbal and Yagara country. By now you should all have received the notices for the May 13 WIA Annual General Meeting via email and the Amateur Radio magazine. For those who wish to be there in person, we have secured a nice venue in our nation's capital thanks to the Uni of Canberra. Most of the directors will be present. Unfortunately, I cannot be there in person due to an upcoming trip away, but I will be there virtually using the Uni of Canberra's live video conferencing facilities. For those like me that cannot be there in person, please keep an eye out for the registration messages, and without prior registration you will not be able to participate remotely. Items on the agenda are presentation of the audited financials for the year ended December 2022, confirmation of elected directors, a very important life membership nomination, and the WIA awards. Following the AGM, there'll be an open forum. This is an excellent opportunity for you to ask questions, make suggestions, and even better, volunteer. This has been Peter, VK4EA, on behalf of the WIA Board of Directors for the WIA National News.
Thanks, Peter. Now, don't forget, register now for the AGM. The link is in our text edition, best read at wia.org.au. Education, and this week we're off to Melbourne, and Peter, VK3BFG.
Amateur Radio Victoria will be holding another online tutorial for the foundation licence, starting Monday the 22nd of May. It is expected that participants will have read the book, Your Entry to Amateur Radio, available from the Amateur Radio Victoria or Wireless Institute of Australia websites. The cost of the tutorial is $60 and goes for 3 nights, 7 till 9 p.m. An online assessment service is offered at the end. You can enrol right now via the Amateur Radio Victoria website, and it is open to anyone, anywhere. I'm Peter, VK3BFG.
Across Australia from VK1WIA, you're tuned to the WIA National News Service. In southwest Western Australia, it can be heard on 160 metres on 1845 kHz at 0600 local time during summer and 0700 local time during winter. I'm Phil, VK6 Golf X-Ray in Kajikana.
I'm Graham, VK4BB, at the Q News workbench, where if you measure once, you're sure to cut twice. We've all picked up a radio and switched it on, only to hear an awful scratchy noise emitting from the speaker. Richard Langer, speaking, and no pun intended, Mr. Speaker, on Hackaday, is no stranger to this problem and has identified a cheap and unusual solution using toilet paper. Certainly not a fix that could have been done at the beginning of the COVID outbreak. Now, the cause of the scratchy sound is that when the speaker's paper cone warps, it can cause the voice coil to rub up against the magnet assembly. In time, this wears out insulation on the coil's turns, damaging the speaker. Richard found that realigning the coil to its proper place would rectify the issue, and this can be achieved by stuffing a small amount of toilet paper in the back of the speaker, just between the cone and the metal housing. To identify the right spot to put the paper, one simply presses on the back of the speaker lightly with a pen while listening out for the scratchy sound to stop. The paper can then be stuffed into this area to complete the fix. This can realign the cone and voice coil and stop the scratchy sound for good. Media Watch and the station of shortwaveradio.de is run by shortwave radio enthusiasts from their transmit site in Lower Saxony, Germany. Their program frequently features amateur radio-related topics. Now, the new transmission schedule for this European summer is 0700 to 1700 UTC weekends, and on Monday to Friday, 1500 to 1700 UTC. The frequency, 6160 kHz AM. You can also hear it from 1700 to 2300 UTC daily on 3975. Now, if you do hear the stations, particularly down under, send in a reception report with at least 30 minutes of program details, including the comments. QSL manager Mario will reply with a printed QSL card.
From here, there and everywhere, you've tuned to the Wireless Institute of Australia's National News Service. We are VK1WIA. Now, international news with VK2LAW Jason.
Hello. World Amateur Radio Day stations celebrating until today include Belgium, Oscar Tango 23 WARD, Croatia 9 Alpha 23 WARD, and South Africa Zulu Sierra 9 WARD. Leading this week's international news from Region 1, following the recently held RSGB AGM, a brief board meeting was held to consider necessary appointments. The board was aware that Stuart Bryant, Golf 3 Yankee Sierra X-Ray, who had been in a dual role since the resignation of Richard Horton, Golf 4 Alpha Oscar Juliet, had expressed a willingness to continue as chair if required. It was agreed that Stuart should be co-opted to the board, and he was asked to join the meeting. He was then elected unanimously to serve as chair until the 2024 AGM. BeConnect. This is the RSGB's idea of connecting, via ham radio, all of the ancient fire beacon sites around the UK. Now Ofcom has agreed to a block of 676 special event station call signs for the RSGB's BeConnect activity for the coronation of the King and Queen Consort. And yes, you heard correctly, 676 special calls. These are Golf Bravo 23 Bravo Alpha Alpha to Bravo Zulu Zulu, which will be made available throughout May and June. The RSGB is asking its members to find a beacon site they could activate one or more times for this event. Hams in Hungary's National Ham Radio Society want to hear from you. Yes, we hams around the world are being invited to provide our views and share experiences about amateur radio through an online survey. The short survey asks questions about your personal preferences and radio history, but also wants to know what your priorities are, whether it's your operating preferences, your expectations from membership in a national society, or the roles you think a local club should have. There are also questions about whether you know very many active younger operators. The Society is interested in having the survey responses in time for the Youngsters on the Air Region 1 camp, which it's hosting in August in Hungary. The group would also like to present the survey results at the IARU General Conference in November. A link to the survey appears in the text edition of this week's WIA National News. To Region 2, look what I found. Hours after the first test flight of SpaceX's Starship ended with the spacecraft and its Super Heavy booster tumbling until it was commanded to explode, possible debris from the colossal rocket has begun to wash up on the shores surrounding the company's Starbase launch facility in Boca Chica, Texas. Photos shared on social media showed that more than one person had come across small fragments of the black and white ceramic tiles from the Starship. Though the Starship test flight was a privately funded activity, it was conducted under a Federal Aviation Administration launch licence, asserting it was being undertaken with the oversight of the United States. As a party to the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, protections are extended that any spacecraft components found anywhere on Earth or in space remain the property of the launch operator until such time that the entity explicitly relinquishes them. As such, all of the Starship debris remains SpaceX's property, even if it's found on private property or in the Gulf of Mexico. On April 3, Ria Joram, November 2, Romeo Juliet joined the board of directors of Amateur Radio Digital Communications, ARDC. After seeing what ARDC has done and is doing, I'm a believer. So I'm here to make that happen, she said. Ria, N2RJ, has been a licensed amateur radio operator since 1997, after first having been licensed in her native Trinidad and Tobago. She's served on the board of the American Radio Relay League and the ARRL Foundation, and is actively involved in amateur radio outreach and education through speaking at clubs, conventions, social media, her weekly radio show on WRMI shortwave radio, and her YouTube channel. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from NYU Tandon School of Engineering and currently works in software and systems development for the financial industry and design consulting for renewable energy and energy storage projects. Congratulations, Ria. And rounding up international news from Region 3 to Fiji. One member of the team is back home from the recent Bouvet Island 3 Yankee 0 Juliet D expedition. But not for long. Cesar, Victor Echo 3 Lima Yankee Charlie, is getting ready to put one of the Fiji Islands back on the air after too many years of things being quiet there. Unuta Island, IOTA number Oscar Charlie 189, was activated first in 1993 and then again in 2007, but there's been no radio operation there since. Cesar will be on the air May 1st through to the 5th using the call sign 3 Delta 2 Lima Yankee Charlie. Xworld.net reports he'll be on most of the HF bands and will operate both CW and SSB. While not as harsh an environment as the one found on remote Bouvet Island, Unuta does not have any visitor accommodation. Cesar said he will be able to locate a generator and gas, as well as food and water to use during his stay. For VK1 WIA National News, in Sydney, I'm Jason, VK2LAW.
Who listens to radio?
I'm Michelle, VK2AYL.
This is Andrew, VK3 Charlie Alpha Hotel.
This is Kevin, VK4UH.
I'm Colin, VK5XY.
This is Stephen Green, VK2TSG.
I'm Felix, VK4FUQ Inningham.
We are VK1WIA. Now, operational news with VK4FUQ. Felix.
Hello there. Now, contest-wise, May 6th, next Saturday, Harry Angel Memorial Sprint, 10 hours UTC to 11:46 UTC. May 2021, Don Edwards Memorial Slow Morse Contest, 80 metre section, Saturday 20th from 6 to 9 p.m. AEST. 40 metre section, Sunday 21st from 1 to 4 p.m. AEST. June 24-25, Winter VHF UHF Field Day. 0100 hours UTC Saturday 24 to 0059 hours UTC Sunday 25. NVK6 add 3 hours on to start and end times. June weekend prior to the second Monday of June, VK Shires. QRP Day happens June 17. IAA UHF World Championship Contest takes place the second full weekend of July, beginning 1200 hours UTC Saturday and ending 1200 hours UTC Sunday, July 8 and 9. July 15, Trans-Tasman Low Band Contest, third weekend in July, 160, 80 and 40 metres with SSB, CW and digital, RTTY or PSK. DX window. These Aussie special calls on air are worth listening for. VI 2023 HRH, 1st to 31st of May, celebrates the coronation of King Charles III. The next 4 are in play to year's end. VI 10 VKFF, celebrates the 10-year anniversary of the VKFF group. VI 100 MB celebrates the centenary year of the Manly Warringah Radio Society. VK90AR for the 90 years of the WIA's journal Amateur Radio Magazine. VK100ZL celebrates the centenary of the first Trans-Tasman radio contact between Australia and New Zealand. Special call sign 3A8AB is operating from Monaco until today, Sunday the 30th of April, commemorating the 100th anniversary of the first transatlantic amateur radio 2A contact between Leon Deloy, F8AB and Fritz-Schnell. 1MO in 1923. QSL via Logbook of the World. JD1 BMH is on the air from Ogasawa until May the 5th. Listen for him on 40 to 10 metres where he's using CW, SSB and RTTY. For QSL and other details, follow the link on qrz.com to the JD1 BMH webpage. DR100 X-ray will be active until the end of June. It's a special call sign commemorating the 100th anniversary of the death of Wilhelm C. Röntgen, the physicist whose discovery of X-rays earned him the inaugural Nobel Prize in Physics in 1901 and revolutionized diagnostic medicine. QSL via the Bureau or direct to DJ6SI. For VK1WIA National News, I'm Felix, VK4FUQ Enningham.
From here, there and everywhere, you've tuned to the Wireless Institute of Australia's National News Service. We are VK1WIA. Now, Special Interest Group News with VK3GTV. Cole.
Hello, our first Special Interest Group is Defence. And the US Department of Defence will host this year's Armed Forces Day crossband test on the 13th of May. This annual event is open to all licensed amateur radio operators in the United States and will not impact any public or private communications. For more than 50 years, military and amateur stations have taken part in this event. The AFD crossband test is a unique opportunity to test two-way communications between military communicators and radio stations in the amateur radio service. These tests provide opportunities and challenges for radio operators to demonstrate individual technical skills in a tightly controlled exercise scenario. Military stations will transmit on selected frequencies and will announce the specific ham frequencies monitored. All times are Zulu and all frequencies are upper sideband unless otherwise noted. A complete list of frequencies, time periods, QSL cards and other information can be found at DoD Mars Armed Forces Day. Worldwide Special Interest Group News, Summits on the Air, Worldwide Flora and Fauna Program, Parks on the Air, and other adventure groups. SOTA Mountain Goat says, tag, you're it. For this story, we catch up with a very grateful SOTA activator who has this important message for all those hams who, like him, have achieved the coveted status of mountain goat. Tag, you're it. Jim Damron, Innate TMW, tells us his story.
Dave Altman, KO4YLZ, is looking for a few new goats. Actually, he's looking for a few old goats, too. Now, none of this has anything to do with age. It's a reflection of pride in Dave's recent accomplishment. The SOTA activator achieved mountain goat status in the Summits on the Air award scheme on March 30th, 11 months after making his first successful SOTA activation. When his informal mentor, Dean K2JB, celebrated his new status by saying, "Welcome to the herd," Dave felt inspired to give something back to colleagues in his own region. What better way to identify a local goat than with genuine ear tags, the kind of tags Dave sees often on some of the local livestock? Using the SOTA logo with permission, Dave had the durable plastic tags laser printed for all those in the W4 region of SOTA who attained the necessary 1,000 points for mountain goat status. He's giving them as gifts to fellow members of the herd, and no, he doesn't expect anyone to attach the tags to their ears. These are for bags used on SOTA outings. Dave said in a recent email to Newsline that he had already given out 7 but has many more. Using the SOTA reflector and the Groups.io board for his local region, he's told fellow mountain goats to either email their name, call sign, and mailing address, or better still, meet up with him sometime for an activation. Picture it, just a couple of mountain goats climbing their next summit together. That would not be so bad. This is Jim Dameron, Innate TMW.
Thanks, Jim. On to Worldwide Special Interest Group's Final Frontier. SpaceX put new satellites into orbit. The SpaceX Falcon 9 Transporter 7 mission has placed these satellites carrying amateur radio into orbit and have been added to the AMSAT NA TLE distribution list. KilixSat, uncoordinated frequency, 436.900 MHz. Serbi IARU coordinated frequency, 437.250 MHz. Inspire Sat-7, IARU coordinated frequencies, 435.2002 MHz and 437.4100 MHz. Rosie CubeSat-1, IARU coordinated frequency, 436.8252 MHz. TLEs, or two-line elements, often referred to as Keplerian elements, or KEPs in our amateur community, are the inputs to most amateur tracking programs, and weekly updates are completely adequate for most amateur satellites. TLE bulletin files are updated Thursday evenings around 2300 UTC, or more frequently if new high-interest satellites are launched. Still on space news, and Nokia and NASA to put wireless service on the moon. A whole new wireless network of sorts is being looked at for the moon. An LTE/4G network destined for the moon is expected to launch on board a SpaceX rocket when the bugs are ironed out, according to plans from the Finnish telecommunications giant Nokia. According to reports on CNBC, it's part of a partnership with NASA that envisions the creation of the first colony on the lunar surface. A message on Nokia's webpage states that the network will be designed to support the transmitting of telemetry, biometrics, and sensing applications, and will also be available for HD video and robotics. Nokia states that the high-bandwidth network will be a vital tool in NASA's plan for so-called sustainable exploration of the moon. NASA chose the Finnish telecommunications company back in 2020, announcing Nokia's role in the Artemis lunar program to return a human presence to the moon, this time for extended operations by the end of the decade. According to the Nokia website, the network would include an LTE base station with integrated evolved packet core functionalities, LTE user equipment, and RF antennas. The system will have hardware redundancy and, through its software, the capacity for remote operation. At the cheaper end of the scale is a $50 satellite in orbit. $50sat, also known as Eagle 2, is an open-source Pocket Cube satellite project that was designed to demonstrate the feasibility of building and launching a functional satellite for just $50. The project was launched 10 years ago in 2013 with the goal of providing a simple and low-cost platform for educational and amateur space missions. $50sat is equipped with a basic communications system, including a UHF-VHF transceiver, a microcontroller, and a simple power system. The satellite is based on a modular design which makes it easy to modify and customize for different missions. One of the key innovations of $50sat is the use of commercial off-the-shelf components, such as a cell phone battery and a Bluetooth module, all of which helps to lower costs. The satellite also leverages a number of open-source hardware and software tools, making it easier for others to build their own satellites based on the $50sat design. Worldwide Special Interest Groups Maritime, an historic event. Amateur radio is about to commence from the historic warship HMAS Vampire, located at the Australian National Maritime Museum in Sydney's Darling Harbour. The HMAS Vampire radio room team will consist of 7 amateur radio operators, all ANNM volunteers, on 7050 kHz CW and 7150 kHz SSB, all days except Sundays during the normal operating hours of the museum. Listen out for the call sign VK2VMP. This new partnership with the museum also provides an excellent opportunity for visitors to see the ship and experience the world of amateur radio. HMAS Vampire is a daring-class destroyer which was commissioned in 1959 and served in the Royal Australian Navy until 1986. Worldwide Special Interest Groups, Radio Amateur Old-Timers. And Clive, VK6CSW, is here to remind us that tomorrow, being the first Monday of the month, means it's time for the Radio Amateurs Old-Timers Club to go to air.
Hello everyone, this is Clive, VK6CSW. This month, instead of the usual broadcast, we will offer an historical broadcast from years past by Alan Doble, VK3AMD. The usual news and information will be broadcast next month. Everyone, RAOTC members and non-members alike, is most welcome to listen to the programme and to join in the callbacks afterwards. Full details of all transmission times and modes can be found on the RAOTC website at www.raotc.org.au or just Google RAOTC broadcasts. If none of the transmission times suit you, you can download the audio file at any time from today from the club website. Members and friends of the RAOTC in Perth are reminded that the next lunchtime meeting at the new venue, the Woodbridge Hotel, East Guildford, will be held on Tuesday, May the 9th. All are welcome, and further details are published on the club's website. Once again, tune in tomorrow for the May RAOTC Bulletin. Enjoy the programme and please join in the callbacks afterwards. 7-3 from Clive, VK6CSW.
Thanks, Clive. And from the old-timer to the young-timer, Alec, VK2APC, and Radio Amateur Young-Timers, Yota.
Thank you, Cole. Youngsters on the Air, or YOTA, was founded in 2011 by a small group of young radio amateurs in IARU Region 1. Together, they created the world's first YOTA camp, which brought friends together for a weekend to play ham radio. This effort got the attention of the IARU Region 1, and shortly thereafter, YOTA became an officially supported advocacy organization for youth in amateur radio. This idea then spread to Region 3 and 2 of the IARU, where Youth on the Air Americans began conducting camps for and by young hams in 2020. Now a $125,000 US grant from Amateur Radio Digital Communications will fund YOTA Americans summer camps through to 2025. In addition, the grant will allow the group to increase the number of campers from 30 to 50 in 2024 and 2025. The 2023 camp will take place in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada in just a few months on July 16th through to July 21st. And on a closing note, a special thanks to the activators who I spent time with, including the organizers Alan, VK1AO, and Marty, VK4KC, and to those I made contact with on the air during this weekend's Pilliga Parkfest. For VK1WIA National News, I'm Alec, VK2APC in Sydney. Now back over to you, Cole.
Thanks, Alec. And that wraps up the segment for this week. I'll catch you again next week. I'm Cole, VK3GTV.
This is VK1WIA. All points of contacts from today's news stories are to be found in print when you read the web editions, www.wia.org.au.
2023 social scene, and clubs are welcome to submit text with audio for this section. Details of all WIA affiliated clubs and societies can be found on the WIA website, including email addresses and the website links, wia.org.au. In VK3 next weekend, Moorabbin Hamfest, May 6. For the whole of VK, but it's happening in Canberra, the WIA AGM, May 13 at 10:30am Australian Eastern Standard Time. A hybrid event conducted both in person and by video conference and able to be viewed on an internet streaming platform. Remember, the WIA AGM registration link is now open. In VK2, the Oxley Region 47th Annual Field Day at Warhope, June 10 and 11, and also June 10 and 11 in VK5, the Surg Convention and Fox Hunting Championships. September 9 in VK4, it's Sunfest in Tasmania. In fact, in Hobart, November 4 and 5, it's Alara Meet 2023. And in VK5, Amateur Radio Experimenters Group Radio and Electronic Sale, November 26. Now, WIA news rebroadcasters often give shortwave listeners a welcome to the broadcast as they commence callbacks straight after the local news. Now, local news follows the national news in all states, and it would be great if those shortwave listeners would email their reception reports and location, and I'll give you this address. It's an email, callbacks@wia.org.au. That's callbacks@wia.org.au. Now, until we meet again, remember to give it 100%, unless you're donating blood. I'm Graham, VK4BB. Walk softly.
From Australia, This has been the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
Courtesy of Bevan, VK5BD's ATV and YouTube channel, this has been WIA National News. We're back now, live and local, and your voice, your callbacks. And don't forget, tick like.
Hello there, this is VK3OTN, the official station of the Radio Amateur Oldtimers Club of Australia, with a monthly news broadcast for members and friends of the club for May 2023. This month, instead of the usual broadcast, we will offer an historical broadcast from years past. The usual news and information will be broadcast next month. I'm Andrew, the VK3 Charlie Alpha Hotel. I have broadcast files going back as far as 2001. Many of the older files aren't the greatest as far as technical quality goes, archived in either real audio or Windows Media Audio format. These produced a smaller file size back in the days when the leading edge technology was dial-up internet. Remember that? This month we have an original broadcast from October 2001. Details on when to hear these news and information broadcasts are available at the club website www.raotc.org.au. The VK3OTN is available on a wide range of radio platforms, HF, VHF and UHF, T-meter repeaters, amateur television, DMR, that is digital mobile radio, and D-Star. These news broadcasts are available for download for up to 6 months, just in case you miss the original news broadcast from the RAOTC website. If you'd like to contact the club, then why not send us an email, raotc@raotc.org.au. I hope you enjoy this month's broadcast.
Hello there, this is Alan Doble, VK3AMD and associated relay stations is VK3OTN, the official call sign of the Radio Amateurs Oldtimers Club Australia. All members will now have received the September issue of our magazine OTN, and many of you have expressed your appreciation of the good work of our editor and publisher, Stuart Day, VK3ESD. Please make sure you study the enclosed leaflet in which we ask for your vote on the very important subject of incorporation. Please consider the matter and get your vote back to the Secretary, Arthur Evans, VK3VQ, if you have not done so already. Your committee must act on the instructions of a majority of members, be it for or against the proposal, so your vote is important. Here in Melbourne, we had our September luncheon at the Bentley Club. A very interesting talk on electronics and defence was given by George Nielsen, VK3TES, who worked at the government ammunition factory in Footscray after the closure of Kingsley Radio, the makers of the legendary AR-7. And I'm very pleased to tell you all that the long search for a black AR-7 communications receiver number 1, which is also an AR-7, is over. The Army Signals Museum has just acquired one by swapping one of its surplus items for it, the AR-7, with a collector. That's great. In South Australia, members are reminded that the annual luncheon will be held on Thursday the 25th of this month at the Marion Hotel in Marion Road, Mitchell Park. Please book with Jack Townsend, VK5HT, Ron Coates, VK5RV, or the Secretary, Ray Dean, VK5RK. His phone number is 82715401. And in West Australia, the next lunch meeting will be held at the Bayswater Tavern on Tuesday the 9th, that's tomorrow week. And we've been told that 22 people turned up for their September lunch, which was a very pleasing result for the organisers. And a few notes about some members. Harry Major, VK3K AE is in Epworth Hospital after surgery on the lower bowel and is making a very good recovery. John Tutton, VK3ZC, is having problems with his right arm due to a car accident in which he was a passenger. And Gordon, VK3XX, reports that Neil Town, VK3ANK, is now 92. And Charlie Robinson, VK7KP, is now 93. Although he's had a couple of strokes, he still keeps scheduled 3 nights a week with old friends. And Dave Gray, VK2IJ, is now in a nursing home after a brief period in hospital. This is VK3OTN. Today we welcome to membership Merv Deacon, VK4DV, a full member who becomes number 1230, and Kevin Garland, VK4AZ, who becomes an associate with member number 1231. So hi there, Merv and Kevin, if you're listening, as I hope you are. And as with regret, we report the passing from us of Lindsay Robb, VK3YR, who was member number 779, and Harry Atkinson, VK3 Whiskey Zulu, who was member number 301, was one of the early members to join the club from VK6. A number of amateur friends attended his funeral. We pause for a few moments of memory of these departed friends. This is VK3OTN. Bruce Edmund Thomas, VK600, spoke the eulogy at Harry Atkinson's funeral, and he said, Harry was born in Trafalgar Road, East Perth, opposite the gasworks, and it has been said that he's been gassing ever since. He had a splendid speaking voice, and anyone who did not know him, speaking to him on the phone, would have taken him for a young man. Harry had only 10% vision, since the government of the time believed that for the purpose of assistance you were either totally blind or not. Harry had to find employment. His first job was with a small printing company which had a publication called Wireless News. Harry joined as a cadet journalist and quickly became editor. He also wrote freelance record reviews for The Broadcaster under the nom-de plume of Waxmaster. This probably gave him the nucleus of the extensive collection of 78 RPM records. It took a world war to give him his first job in radio. That was a vacancy at 6GE, Geraldton, as copywriter and announcer, which he heard of through a fellow amateur. He subsequently worked in the Whitford Broadcasting Network at Kalgoorlie and Katanning, including Albury, where he was responsible for setting up 6BA and managing that station. I first came to know him when I became active in the Wireless Institute in 1978. This is Bruce Thomas, 600, speaking. At that time he was living in Albany and was very protective of the interests of country members. Within the council he was known as the Mouth from the South, and when he came to live in Perth in 1986, he was quickly recruited on that same council and became our news broadcast officer. I ferried him to and fro the meetings and we became very firm friends. All his life, wherever he found himself, and despite his handicap, Harry was an achiever. Let me try to give you some idea of how he strived. For example, he was a narrator for the talking books. He had a TV camera set up to look at a book a few lines at a time, and this fed a magnified image to an old 26-inch black and white TV set from which he read. Some of his awards were 1982 Rostrum Speaker Certificate, 1986 Wireless Institute Amateur of the Year, 1987 Association for the Blind Commendation for Services as Narrator, 1994 Office of Seniors Outstanding Volunteer Award, year 2000 Wireless Institute Honorary Life Member, 2001 Wireless Institute's Significant Recognition of over 50 years as a licensed amateur. I also saw on his wall at one stage a certificate for a fun run in Albany at an age when you and I would be reaching for pipe and slippers. He wrote many letters to editors, always well crafted, on subjects about which he felt strongly. Beneath that sometimes cantankerous exterior beat a very idealistic and romantic heart. Harry wanted to be in one last time. He met Dolly and fell in love. She accepted his proposal and he took her to the registry office in a hired Rolls Royce. They moved from Dolly's single unit to a double and she encouraged him in setting up a new shack. It would not be quite direct to say an irresistible force met an immovable object, but they were two strong-minded people. One of those irregular English verbs, I'm strongly minded, you are stubborn, he or she is downright obstinate, unquote. But they were strong in support of each other. Harry was proud of Dolly's exploits and loved to boast about them. And thanks to Dolly, Harry was probably the first radio ham to get permission to erect an aerial mast in a retirement village. Dolly showed her love in her care of Harry as he became progressively more ill over the last 3 years. Like him, she was a crossword fanatic and possibly his equal as a wordsmith. They would occasionally ask me what I thought about a particular word they'd been discussing. No brief eulogy could do Harry justice. There are people here today who could talk at length about radio aspects of his life, of which I know nothing. His knowledge was incredibly wide and deep. On Wednesday afternoon, as we sat in the unit talking, we could feel Harry's influence on everything we said, and we who knew him always will. That was the eulogy to Harry by Bruce Edwin Thomas, VK600. This is VK30TN. The destruction of the Trade Center towers in New York leads to thoughts about very tall buildings. I've just been reading about one which at the time, quite a few years ago now, was claimed to be the tallest in the world. It was the CN Tower in Toronto, Canada. Built primarily to support the city's radio and TV antennas, it was of interesting construction and vertical within 1.1 inches in reinforced concrete. Some details are as follows: height 1,815 feet 5 inches, or 555.33 meters, whichever you prefer. The outdoor observation deck was at 1,122 feet and the indoor observation deck at 1,136 feet. The revolving restaurant was at 1,150 feet, and there was a further deck at 1,465 feet, and it was claimed that the view from this deck could reach for 100 miles. The 4 elevators travelled at 1,200 feet a minute, and took about 70 seconds for the upward journey. And I would guess you would get that sinking feeling going down at that rate. The tower's 353-foot high transmission mast is claimed to be the world's tallest self-supporting structure. George Lance, 3DS, provided this bit of information. Thank you, George. This is VK30TN. A lot of information has been published about the American government's HAARP project, that's High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. Many Australian amateurs listened to and some reported on a much publicised series of test transmissions from it on the amateur bands a couple of years ago. It's located up in Alaska. The antenna system, which is described as a large cluster of crossed dipoles on 180 towers, each 22 metres high, is said to be electronically steerable so that it could possibly be used as an over-the-horizon radar if requested. The frequency range is said to be 2.5 to 10 megahertz and the power 3.6 megawatts from 360 10-kilowatt transmitters when it's operated at full power. The current world situation following the attack on New York and Washington leads me to wonder if we might hear this system operating in woodpecker mode in the near future. Pardon me. And Tim Humphrey, VK3BCN, has recommended 2 books which he's acquired in recent times. The first is The Code Book. The author Simon Singh, S-I-N-G-H, publisher Fourth Estate, London in 1999, and the ISBN number for that is 1-85702-8899. Repeat, 1-85702-8899. The other book is The History of U.S. Electronic Warfare in 3 volumes. The publisher is the Association of Old Pros, who are located at 1000 North Payne Street, that's P-A-Y-N-E, Payne Street, Alexandria, Virginia, USA, 22314-1696. Thanks, Tim, VK3BCN. This is VK30TN for the Radio Amateur Old Timers Club. Somehow I've acquired a copy of a little magazine called CQ, dated August 1929. Its subtitle is A Magazine Issued in the Interests of Australian Amateur Radio. It was published by the New South Wales Division of the Australian Radio Transmitters League. An article on page 133 describes and shows pictures of station VK3DC, Toorak, Victoria. This was the station of the late Stuart Embling, who was A3DC, then OA3DC, in the years before the introduction of the VK prefix. Stuart Embling was captain in charge of the wireless section of the 3rd Divisional Signals in 1929 when I was called up for compulsory military service. He was a civilian at the time, but served in Army signals throughout World War II, rising to the rank of colonel. The sets used by signals at that time were the ACK set, which worked on about 200 to 400 metres, and the larger Cork set, which worked about 1,000 metres. Stuart Embling persuaded higher authorities to allow 3rd Div signals to move to short waves for the first time in Australian military history, and a transmitter was built by Army Ordnance, and a receiver was built in Embling's shack in his family home, mostly on Sunday afternoons. I was one of the signalmen who helped do that. From memory, this rig worked in the 30 to 40 metre band. Anyway, back to the description of Stuart Embling's own rig at that time. The first valve used in the station at 296 William Road, Toorak, was a Z2A, which was heard in England and which worked South America, thus getting one of the hardest continents from an Australian point of view for the WAC certificate. The present valve is a TA8/425, the input ranging up to 50 watts. The meters shown in the photo, reading from left to right, are aerial hot wire ammeter of 1 to 2 amps, DC voltmeter 0 to 2000, AC voltmeter 0 to 15, DC milliammeter for the grid 0 to 25, and DC milliammeter 0 to 200. 3 transformers are used in the modified Colpitts circuit. 1 HT 1500 aside, 1 filament, lighting and battery charging with windings for 1.8 volts and 6 to 32 volts, and 1 rectifier filament, which can supply 9 volts at 15 amps. The rectifiers are 2 S-tubes that are standby, 4 in bridge and 1 spare, and 2 G3s, which have only been in operation a few months. The smoothing unit consists of 6 microfarads and 2 30 Henry chokes. A key thump chirp filter is employed as the transmitting aerial is directly under the BC aerial, broadcast aerial. It has been noticed that interruptions in the form of clicks are not appreciated when a good broadcast item is being received. The receiver is the conventional 2-valve with valve-based coils, 4 coils covering the amateur bands. A portable transmitter is available when HT can be supplied. This set uses a TB04/10 as a receiving tube in a Hartley circuit. It can be used with a power unit for QRP work most successfully. A separate transmitter for 10 metres is employed using a TB04/10 in a Colpitts circuit. Up to the present, not much success has been obtained, but there are hopes for the future. The 40-metre aerial is a half-wave ZEP, 66 feet long with 33-foot feeders. For 80, the same aerial is used with the feeder series condensers at maximum and the condenser in parallel. This arrangement appears to work very well, as excellent reports have been received from all states, New Zealand and Fiji. A standby vertical tube fundamental is also available for 40 metres. The 20-metre aerials consist of a vertical fundamental with horizontal counterbuoys, each 15 feet, and a half-wave ZEP. To the present, the vertical has been found to be superior to the ZEP for DX. The 10-metre aerials are conspicuous by their inability to radiate to any distance. In the main transmitter, the alterations from 80/40 to 20 are made by means of clips, which are quick and convenient. The last and perhaps the most important piece of apparatus is the monitor. To fellows who have not got such a piece of paper, such a piece of apparatus, it is suggested that they make one. For it will be found that no more interesting or more useful instrument can grace your operating table. This set is enclosed in an aluminium box and uses a B406 with 45 volts on the plate and a 4.5 volt C battery for supplying filament current. A description of circuit, etc. can be found in a recent issue of QST. Its uses are, firstly, to hear the note, clicks, etc., secondly, to check your wavelength, and thirdly, to find out where you are on your own receiver by plugging in a shorted jack. This is very fine print. This set generates harmonics, and therefore it is easy to find 80 or 10 for your transmitter and receiver when you know where 40 is. Perhaps the last remarks are a little off the tracks of a station description, but it may be found useful to those who have not yet made a growler. This station has worked 27 countries on all bands, holds WAC and RCC, and has been a member of the WIA and the Australian Corps of Signals since it began operation in 1926. What you'd like to know about that? The author for that article in that old magazine is not stated. That's interesting, and was an Australian radio magazine. This is VK3AMD as VK3OTN. And here's a note to our secretary, Arthur Evans, VK3VQ, from Jim Davis, VK70W. As it says, this is Jim 70W talking. This is proof that I used to talk to a dog in Arlington, Texas. His name was Smokey, and he was owned by a great ham friend of mine, K5TGE, Commander Jim Sarno, who spent a lifetime in the USA Navy. During the war, Jim was commander on the big carrier Enterprise 1, which helped save Australia during action in the Battle of Midway Island and the Coral Sea. Jim was the first USA station I worked when I got my novice license, BK7NOW, in 1976. We had a regular daily sched on 28 megahertz for nearly 20 years, depending on propagation, and later on 21 megahertz. We became very close friends, and Jim used to bring Smokey into his radio shack. One day I spoke to Smokey, and he pricked up his ears and barked. That started it, Arthur. We'd put on a radio on Vox, and I would talk to Smokey, and he would bark back. Jim, K5TGE, was so impressed that he took 3 photos. Number 1 shows him listening to me, number 2 shows where he's jumping up to talk to me, and 3 shows Smokey having a QSO with me. If you think it's worth a story, I could have 3 prints made and send them to you. I guess I would be one of the few hams in the world to have a regular QSO with a dog. And Jim has been as good as his word, and we received 3 very good colour photos of Smokey in barking mode. What a pity we can't reproduce them in colour in the next issue of OTN. But anyway, thank you, Jim, VK7OW. This is VK3OTN. This broadcast in our magazine can only exist and continue if we have the material to include. This material, or anyway most of it, must come from our members. The trouble right now is the flow of contributions is lower than it ever was before. So please let us hear from you about some aspect of your life or activities in or out of radio. There has to be something your mates would like to hear about. The written or printed word or email or on a disc. Don't worry about bad writing. I'll quote from a note from a lady who often reads handwriting and turns it into typescript for us, and I quote her words. We are document doctors, wordsmiths. We take scrambled thoughts, garbled notes, rotten spelling, and fractured grammar and bad writing, and turn them into powerful, efficient, and productive documents, unquote. That lady can actually read my handwriting, which is more than many other people can do, and I'm not kidding. So please help and encourage us to keep our broadcast and magazine going. And talking of words and their usage, there's the story of two young students for the priesthood. They both enjoyed smoking their pipes. One day, one of them asked the head priest of the seminary if he could smoke during morning prayers, and was answered by a very firm no. He was surprised to see a couple of days later his friend smoking his pipe during morning prayers, and he asked him afterwards had he got permission to do so and how had this come about. His friend said, "Oh, I asked him if I could pray while I was smoking." And on that happy note, I'll leave you to our next broadcast on Monday, November the 5th. Repeat, November the 5th. That's Guy Fawkes Day, I think. By that time, here in Melbourne, VK237 and possibly VK5 will have daylight saving time. The initial transmissions will be on 740 and, will be on 2 metres, 40 and 80 metres. And will be at 10 a.m. daylight saving time, and the 80-metre transmission on 80 metres will be at 8:30 p.m. daylight saving. The 20-metre transmissions to the north and west remain at 0001 and 0002 UTC year-round. You can check the details on the facing sheet of the magazine you've just received. This is Alan Doble, BK3AMD, and associated relay stations is BK3OTN for the Radio Amateur Old-Timers Club Australia, and now concluding this month's transmission. Callbacks will follow on all frequencies. Please take part in them, and thank you for listening, and 73. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
You have been listening to VK3OTN. VK3OTN is the official station of the Radio Amateurs Old-Timers Club Australia. This concludes this month's news and information bulletin. The next IOTC news and information broadcast will take place on the first Monday of next month, on the same frequencies and at the same times as today, with the exception of January. Thanks for being with us, and we hope you will join in the callbacks, where callbacks are taken. 73 everyone.